Let's get chilly. Hello and welcome back to Let's Chill, the official, unofficial Minnesota Wind Chill, Minnesota Strike podcast. I'm Jeph.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Caine.
And week one, or I suppose game one, technically, for both the Wind Chill and the Strike are in the books. And we've got a lot to talk about. Caine, why don't you give us the recap for the last week or two?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, it's good to be back. Seeing Minnesota Frisbee back in action is always a good thing. Being back home at Seafoam Stadium for that opening game for the Strike was incredibly good. The atmosphere was awesome. Unfortunately, that Strike game was a loss to open the season. It was against the New York Gridlock, who, as we've discussed off pod a little bit, has 4 games under their belt as opposed to the Minnesota Strike's 1 game now. But that's a conversation for a different day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's its own.
Yeah.
But like I said, the Minnesota Strike did lose 12-21 at home. Some key takeaways from that game, I think, for me, were we had many discussion. It felt like the Strike were working with some good rebuilding tools. There were a lot of really solid points, a lot of good execution on plays. Individual performances were really good. I don't think there were any real big negatives. I don't think that the loss was because of a bad team, if that makes sense. I think that this is going to be a promising season. I'm excited to see what the next 5 games look like. I do think that looking at a 9-point loss on game 1 is a little disheartening, but the rest of the season is looking all right. Switching over to the Wind Chill, they traveled to Indianapolis to take on the Alley Cats, a much different looking team in an outdoor stadium this year. I didn't realize they were moving outdoors as well. And the final score of that game was Indianapolis 17, Minnesota 32.
Wow.
So the reigning champions kind of ran away with that one. I think key takeaways from this game for me were defensive pressure was right back where it was ending last season. The additions of James Pollard and Justin Burnett to the D-line were immediately felt. I think Burnett had, I remember 2 blocks alone. I kind of stopped watching towards the end of the game there, but he had a major impact. James Pollard, seeing him take the field for the first time was really exciting. So I think the Minnesota Wind Chill show a lot of promise. I think the Minnesota Strike show a lot of promise, despite the outcomes of the games kind of being different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice and succinct. Appreciate that, Caine. If you may notice, we're going to kind of move this along. We're trying something new with a shorter podcast this season and with some more formal segments. So our next segment we're going to do is a clip analysis. We are going to share our screen. This is not really a new segment, but we're going to do it regularly. So Jay discovered or pointed out a clip that we wanted to break down today from the Strike game. I'll kind of quickly preview it, and then Jay, you can walk us through it. This is fourth quarter in the Strike game. They are down 17-7. And in this clip, the Strike have the disc on offense, and maybe the highlight will be that it really shows good disc movement. Again, maybe despite the outcome of the game, this is a very promising offensive momentum, an offensive point for the team. So this is on 0.75 speed. Maybe we can just watch it once through really quick, and then we'll go from there. We'll kind of break it down. So the disc will be right here in the middle of the screen. I believe that's McKellar Daly with the disc right now. They just received the pull a couple throws ago. You see Daly centers it to Poyer there. And the team will kind of set up their stack middle of the field here. And Jay, actually, if you want to kind of cut in and kind of annotate as we watch this here.
Yeah, so I think that catch right there on the sideline, that was a possession-saving catch, was really good. And then it centered it back. And then we see the next few throws, or rather, most of the throws on this possession are coming off of that first or second look from the stack, until eventually Poyer gets the disc.
Right here.
Yeah, right here, Poirier's going to get the disc. And again, she's coming one of the first looks off the stack. She sees another good quick look, and then she's looking already, eyeing up open space on the field and making that cut right away. And she cuts to it, and that's the first, again, one of the first looks on the field for, I don't remember, I don't see who she passed to there. It might have
Aria,
been,
that was Aria Kishner. She passed to, and then who, and after the strike cut. Yeah.
yeah,
I also want to annotate y'all seeing this. Look at that end zone, those end zone fans there. That's me and Caine in the end zone there. No big deal.
nice, nice. I did not realize that. Um,
Let me go back. I'll go back again, and we can kind of, Jay, if you want to re-break it down. How do I get rid of that now? Anyway, okay. So here's the start of the point off the pole.
yeah, so the striker are really looking at the field and taking a lot of very quick options, very quick looks. They're not really holding onto the disc for all that long. They're not letting New York's defense get set up, which I think was a big problem for them throughout this entire game. That their New York was just getting a little bit too set up, a little bit too in their rhythm. So even like this throw here, that was the possession saving catch. It was a quick throw, but which could have gone awry, but because the Strike were able to keep the possession going, keep the possession alive, it did still prevent New York from getting their defense set up. And throughout the entirety of the game, we were talking about, or I was talking about how the Strike's offense really looked like they didn't have control of the field and that New York's defense was kind of running the show. But this point really felt like the Strike the whole time. They had control of the point. They were the ones deciding, where the disc is going, how the momentum was going. And they were making those quick decisions and keeping New York on their toes. And I think that's where the Strike are going to excel throughout the rest of the season is making those quick decisions.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could totally be wrong here, but I believe Gridlock were mostly forcing middle most of the game. It wasn't a crazy, especially at this point. I think Kelsey Percy had commented right on the poll that the wind had died down. There wasn't any like significant wind like there usually is at Seafoam. But Strike, I think, do a good job at kind of moving it to the sidelines, kind of going against maybe the force. Right here, I believe this is Allegra Johnson McKee with the disc. She's got pretty good field positioning, center of the field, and she's looking to the sideline. Danielle Byers is already making that cut. Yeah, I think the field awareness of the team, handlers and cutters both, was really strong at this point. I mean, they're throwing around their marks. Go ahead, Caine.
I was gonna say one of the strikes like strengths, especially on this point that we're all talking about the continuation cuts, is one of those things that Jay you alluded to is really important when you're trying to disrupt a defense. If you can get the first cut off of a stack gets the disc. If you can continue that and get it to the second cut or the third cut off of the stack rather than having to reset it or having to swing it to middle or anything like that, even if you're on the sideline, is really important because if you're a defender, if you're doing a zone or man, you do not have time to set a mark. You don't have time to cut off the space in between the disc and the next person trying to get the continuation cut. And I think that Minnesota, especially in the fourth quarter, kind of started firing on those cylinders and really started putting it together and hitting those continuation cuts, not letting New York put that defense down. And unfortunately, it just came in the fourth quarter. And that's why I'm saying that, these next 5 games, I really do expect Minnesota to have a much stronger offensive standing when they take the field.
It really matters, but they only have 4 games left. But yeah.
Okay, Jeph, they're making it a championship weekend.
Okay, true, but then it's more than 5 games.
We'll give them 8 games then.
I don't know.
Unlimited games, but no games. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know if I have too much to add. I'm just gonna play this point one more time through, since that's already going. But I think just watch Poyer specifically. She's got the disc right now in the frame. I think she leads the offense really well on this point. Obviously, she has that last strike cut, which gets the point, and it's just. Yeah, again, the field awareness, the awareness of where your teammates are, where the disc is. I mean, Steph Wood with that grab can't ask for better effort in down 10 in the fourth. Like, I believe that's Steph Wood. It's hard to tell. Yeah, then Poyer comes in, makes the in cut, dishes it out, and immediately makes a strike cut for the point. Like, That's high effort for a team who, again, is down 10 with 8 minutes left. You love to see that.
Hmm. And I think
100%.
that the Strike know that this is game one. This is against a New York team that is, I think, the consensus is that they are the best in the league right now. I don't think that
Yeah.
that's a hot take or anything to say. Um, and so I think the Strike really were. They're a hungry team. Like I said, that mentioned earlier, this is sort of a rebuild year. They are trying to establish more of an identity. Um, and so yeah, I do appreciate seeing that fourth quarter full effort from all the players, and I'm really looking forward to the game against Milwaukee this upcoming week, which we'll get to. We'll get to.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think this kind of maybe will bridge us a little bit. It was interesting too because I think the personnel on the field wasn't maybe what the team wanted. They weren't at full health. They were missing a few key players. I mean, Julia Hill was gone. Um, I had a whole list of players who were not actually rostered, but they should have been, or but they had a lot of reserve players up. I mean, Rachel Johnson was playing. I believe Rachel Johnson's a reserve player who I didn't expect her to see her on the field first game. So I think personnel was different. I think it's a relatively young team, like we were maybe saying. So yeah, I think once they get their chemistry and they get some strong leadership on the field, that they'll be golden because they've got the talent. They just need to figure out how to put it together. So so yeah, that's gonna kind of go into my preview for the Milwaukee game. The Striker traveling to, I think, I don't know if they're actually still playing in Madison or not. Ironically, I know they're the Milwaukee Monarchs, but no, last year they played at Breese Stevens Field in Madison. I don't actually know where they're playing this year, but they're traveling to Wisconsin, somewhere in Wisconsin, to play the Milwaukee Monarchs on Friday. It'll be this Friday, the 15th, right? Is that the 15th? The 16th. The 16th.
16th.
Um, and so, yeah, we're going to go to keys to the game here for the Minnesota Strike. I've got two keys to the game that I think we want to watch for as the Strike travel for the first road game. First is establish an early rhythm. This is exactly what we were just talking about. I think everyone on the field needs to kind of know their roles, especially on offense, and slot into their roles, get to that early rhythm, and set a strong foundation and strong carry the momentum. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. The momentum from the end of the game, that fourth quarter where you just broke down, um, move the disc well, set a strong tone early in the game. Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's my first key. Go ahead, Caine.
I think in terms of like momentum, there are a few games like Frisbee where you can get streaks that change a game. Even if you're down by 8, that's comebackable. Even if it is fourth quarter, I mean, you get to a certain point where it's not. But but
Yep.
I do think it's important that if Minnesota wants to establish an identity, they have to maybe get a streak to open a game up. They have to, like you said, establish an opening to the game and not take full quarters to really get themselves going. So
Yeah, I think that just starting off early and keeping those lines moving quickly, um, getting players on and off the field efficiently can really like boost morale almost on a
Mhm.
sideline. Like, yep, we were just out there, we got that quick hold, or we got a quick break or something. I think I could really like fire up the next line coming onto the field. So that's also like a really big part of that.
My second key to the game is kind of gonna go right into that as well. Is focus on small ball fundamentals. I mean, this is such a boring key to the game. Maybe we say this every week, but like, you don't need the big flashy plays. You need the fundamentals. You need, again, to kind of know your role, know your identity, and lean into it. I think they did a decent job at this last week. There were some moments where they tried to move too quickly. They tried to get too big. But what they just need to do is get the disc to the next player, move the stack down, get a block when you can get a block. You don't need to get that layout block. You can get that run through D or whatever it's going to take, right? Or even just pressure on the handler. Get the disc to the next player, reset, whatever you need to do. Don't get too big. You're not going to win championship weekend next week in Wisconsin, you know. And again, I think they did a good job last week at doing it. If they can just continue to stick with their identity, know who they are, know their role, they'll be golden.
I think a big part of that as well is just part of sticking to fundamentals that I feel like we gloss over a lot is taking the easy play.
Yeah.
That high percentage pass. Sure, it's 1, maybe 2 yards, but 1, maybe 2 yards is, 1 or 2 yards more than a turnover.
Mm.
So take that
And
high
and that
percentage.
and as I said, that could lead to a break throw, like a break side throw potentially if it's a 1 to 2 yard reset, which leads to a 1 to 2 yard reset, which then leads to a break. Or like I know I'm like really diluting this here, but it'll add up. It adds up. You don't have to make that break throw every throw, right? I think another thing too that maybe I didn't articulate like I wanted to is even letting the stall count raise. I want to see the stall count get higher than 5. Like a good amount next game. Not necessarily in a way of like letting the defense set up, because I think we just talked about how they did a good job at not letting the defense set up. But I think their game against Gridlock, it's like they were not letting New York's defense set up, but their offense also wasn't set up. So like if it means holding the disc for 5 seconds, yeah, you're gonna let the Monarchs get a little bit more ready, but your offense will be more ready too. Again, if your offense is clicking, if you're on a rhythm, you'll be fine. I don't. We don't need consecutive, 1, 2 second stall count throws. Like you've got 10 seconds. Let's use them.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to push back on that, but also on the flip side of that, I think the handler movement, quick handler movement, is something that would be something I like to see a little bit more of. Um, in my eyes, as someone who switched to being a handler more so in the last couple of years here, I think that that is personally the most important part of moving the disc upfield is getting the handlers back involved after the cutters get the disc. I know we
Mm,
just said about the continuation cut, but a lot of times that is a risky cut, or you're trying to, force that 2 second throw where you have a short window. I do
yeah,
think that a lot of times getting the disc back to the handlers and letting them kind of move it themselves is going to allow, like you said, the offense to set up. You let the handlers shoulder some more responsibility. You let them take a couple more catches here and there while you make another cut. And I think that that's
absolutely.
something that the strike will fall into as their handlers kind of establish themselves in the season here.
Agreed. Caine, thanks for saying that because that's going to move into my next segment, which is players to watch for the strike. My number one player to watch by far is going to be Julia Hill. Julia Hill was missing. I think I mentioned that earlier this episode from the roster last week, um, and so she's going to be suiting up for the strike first time this season. And I think she's going to be a big factor in that. I think she's going to be, QB1 or a primary leadership role. I think it'll still be a handler. And that's going to be huge. I think exactly Kane, what you were just saying. If Julia Hill can help control the disc movement, if they can get the disc to Julia, not because she's the most talented on the team or the most experienced or any of that, but just like I think she has a good leadership presence. I think she can kind of direct people in a strong way. That's going to be they'll be set up for success. Um, so I really want to keep your eyes on Julia Hill, and see what she could do. Our good friend Chucks, if you will.
I also think something that Julia Hill is going to bring to this team is that sort of holding the disc for more than 5 seconds
Mm-hmm.
because she is someone who will evaluate the whole field, who will see the options that not only that she has, but she'll be thinking ahead of the options she has coming next. And if she thinks that the next option is going to be better, she'll take that next option. She'll hold the disc a little bit longer and she'll see those plays unfold. And I think that's something we've seen from her in previous seasons as well.
Yeah, I hate to do analogies to other sports, but I mean, sometimes you do need the quarterback. You just need that person
Mm-hmm.
back there who can direct the offense. Like I said, like sometimes the handler needs to step up and shoulder a little bit more responsibility and force themselves to be moving the disc more. Um, Maybe not necessarily like going down for the deep cuts, but getting involved, getting every other catch if they have to, because not to say they know what they're doing and the other players don't, but when you have that
Mm-hmm.
experience, when you're in that rhythm, I think having a handler, a QB1 who's really in the zone, who's firing on all cylinders is a threat that forces the other team to adapt to, which then frees up the rest of your offense. And so, yeah, Julia Hill's a great call out. We'll see how she does.
I want to get to my second player watch really quick, and then I know we're gonna cover the wind chill. And we're on a time crunch here. I think we're actually doing all right on time, but just calling that out here. My second player to watch for the strike is Ellie Fireside Ostergaard. I think she had. I wish we had stats to kind of guide this conversation. I think she had a relatively quiet game last week. I think she maybe had one or two goals. I know she had an impact on the game, but she can be bigger, right? We've seen the speed that she brings, the spark to the defense that Ellie brings. They're fast, they're a fun player, and I think that's just going to be a big component to have. I think she's going to be a big influence on the team's defensive counterattack against the Monarchs. I mean, she could definitely be placed on O2, but I think primarily a D line cutter who can shift the momentum, get those breaks, generate those blocks, and then turn and get that those bookends in the end zone. So I want to see Ellie. I want to see Ellie fired up.
To me, a D-line cutter is sort of like the answer to an offensive QB1 that you can't shut down. If you can't put a mark on that, then you have to have someone who's quick enough to shut down the throw. And I think that Fireside Ostergaard, like you said, brings that quickness, brings that spark to the defense that will generate blocks, and I do expect to see at least one.
Not to mention that, like we mentioned before, like being able to get a quick, if you get a block, be able to get a quick break after the fact can really fire up that next line going out there. And I think, Belly Fireside Ostergaard is going to be the person, like Jeph mentioned, to get those bookends. If they get a block, they will be booking it down the rest of the field, and you can expect them to be catching the disc in the end zone.
Absolutely. All right, Jay, you want to share with us the wind chill preview?
Yeah, so this upcoming Saturday, the 17th, the wind chill will be traveling. No, sorry, they'll be at home, won't they?
There, it's the home opener.
Yeah, the home opener against the Chicago Union. It will be Chicago's first game of the season, so it'll be our first time seeing this super team that Chicago has put together to try to, basically take down the Minnesota Wind Chill this year.
Oh.
So I think a couple of keys to the game here. The first of which is going to be that the Wind Chill need to stay chilly. In this last game against Indy was making plenty of mistakes that the Wind Chill were able to capitalize on, but we shouldn't be expecting that of Chicago. So when the Wind Chill have a chance to capitalize on, a defensive break point or anything like that, they need to keep the disc. They need to stay chilly. They need to make the good looks, the good cuts, and not take anything for granted.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't have 10-second stall count in the UFA, but like it's okay to let that stall count rise a little bit, 3 or 4 seconds, rather than you get that block, your adrenaline's pumping, and you see Dylan DeClerc running downfield. Like that's usually a good look. You can usually take that look, but you don't have to, right? Like you've got options.
Yeah, I think, like I've said before, and off-pod, on-pod offense is going to be sort of the thing to follow this year, especially for the wind chill. Sorry, my cat is
I was
running
gonna
up
say
the field in the
I
background.
heard that cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a cat wheel at my house, at my apartment, and he likes to run on it. That's Booger. Anyway, and so I think if Minnesota is looking to do a repeat championship, I think they have to fire on par with the best offenses in the league that we've seen this season. I mean, we've seen Atlanta, we've seen the Spiders just doing some crazy offensive numbers, and we as good as our defense is, we have to be able to, stay chilly, put together a consistent offense. And that's the key word, is consistent. That's something that Minnesota has definitely struggled with in the past. So,
Caine, thank you for segueing perfectly into the second key to the game, which is I want to see a high hold percentage. I'm talking 80 to 90 or higher percentage. Minnesota, I mean, last game, they didn't really have that many hold opportunities. Comparatively to the Alley Cats, of course. But they were, 16 out of 19, so 84%, which is pretty good. They only didn't get 3, and they got broken 3 times. But they're probably going to get more offensive opportunities in the game against Chicago. So I want us to be seeing, that number staying consistently above 80%. I don't want Chicago getting a ton of breaks. I don't want Chicago's defense to get the chance to come alive.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the nice thing about the Chicago rebuild that's happening is that a lot of it is an offensive focus rebuild. Where we've seen Giannis come back, we've seen Victor Luo. Um, yeah, I'm blanking on names, but those are two key pieces who are sliding into their O line. So hopefully that bodes well for Minnesota's O line. That Chicago's defense won't be putting on pressure, but again, to that point, then there's almost less of an excuse, right, to get broken. Like if Chicago's really not putting a lot of defensive pressure on you, then you can't let them get free defensive pressure. They have to earn those breaks, and hopefully they don't.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that what you said at the end there is that I would love to see only forced turnovers this game. I think Minnesota, especially against Chicago, has kind of fallen into a rhythm of playing a little sloppy, getting a little bit in their heads and falling into a 4 point deficit, and then just turns into an ugly kind of snowball game. Um, I think if Minnesota can keep it kind of 1-to-1 with Chicago on offense and keep it, like I said, consistent throughout the game, that'd be how they do it. That's how they win.
Yep.
All right, moving into those players to watch for this upcoming week. Caine sort of alluded to this earlier. Justin Burnett, he did not have 2 blocks. He had 4 blocks against the Indianapolis Alley-Cats. So yeah, he's already putting up wild numbers for the wind chill. And like Jeph had been mentioning, their offense is what really got all those pieces really added to them. So if Burnett can be putting up those blocks, be forcing those turnovers, that's going to spell good things for Minnesota this coming week.
Yeah, I don't know who your other player to watch is yet. You haven't shared with us, but I think the Justin Burnett, James Pollard additions really complement the Chicago additions who they added. It's gonna be a fun matchup, no matter who's matched up with who. Just the pure defensive, offensive matchups. It's gonna be really fun. Burnett will be at the center of it, of course.
Yeah, I think Chicago, or at least when the last time Giannis was on the team, I guess I don't know the new identity, was very handler focused. Lots of movement, lots of short upfield passes and swing passes. And I think we saw yesterday that Burnett excelled in cutting off those little diddly little swing passes where he saw that quick opening and he hops off his guy and gets the disc. I think that's the kind of attack that we need to see in this next game against Chicago. And yeah, Burnett's the guy to do it.
Jeph, unfortunately, Pollard is not the second player to watch.
Oh,
It's actually going to be Bevon.
okay.
He did not have very many points played comparatively. He only had 19 points played this last game. Um, Vanny Mortel was putting up like 26, playing a ton on defense. But because Bevon, it's looking like he's going to be primarily an O-line player this year. And we did not see much of Minnesota's O-line. We saw some of it. We didn't see a ton of Minnesota's O-line against the Alley Cats. So I'm excited to see, Bevon being primarily on the O-line, being that primary first, maybe even second option with Gordon Larson, but being one of those two main options on the field and the damage that he can do on the O-line, keeping it chilly, making those good cuts, making those good looks. I think he's going to be very integral in that.
I don't have too much to add. I'm just gonna say he continues to age like fine wine.
Yeah, he's like a Swiss Army knife. And I think if he can be more comfortable and get more reps on O line and kind of help give it some more consistency, I think that would be one of the ways that Minnesota will help establish a more effective offense this year. So I like that. I like that call out. We'll see what he does this season.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, I think that's all we got. Previewing the upcoming strike and windshield games. Like I said, the strike are kicking off the weekend for Minnesota Frisbee. Friday night in Wisconsin. So check them out. I know there's watch parties, I believe, at, I want to say Blackheart in St. Paul, or a bar of their own, actually. I think it's a bar of their own. It's the official watch party for the Minnesota Strike. And then Saturday night, the Wind Chill are opening up their home opener against the Chicago Union at Seafoam Stadium. And we need you to be super loud. We need you to show up, get loud, bring your noisemakers, bring your signs, and let's welcome home those champions. It's going to be a fun season. I mean, I know it's already started. I don't know. I think I have to just say that it's going to be a fun season to watch both of these teams. But yeah, we can't wait to see you guys all in person again this Saturday. Anything else, guys?
Good to be back. Excited to watch some
back.
more Minnesota Frisbee.
Heck yeah. Stay chilly and ka-chow.
Stay chilly.
Yeah,
Ka-chow.
actually.